Now, Religion 101 comes to China. With China, we have a different case than we had with the Indian religions, Jainism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And certainly, if there is an opposite to the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, it has to be the Chinese religions of Confucianism and Daoism, and of course, the very much transformed Buddhism that we'll see in East and Central Asia. China's nickname in the religious studies world is that of the land of three religions. So, one can easily be Daoist and Confucian and Buddhist all at the same time. It's even said one is born a Daoist, one lives life Confucian, and then one dies a Buddhist. We'll see with Daoism, the Tao is our very body, and certainly I will say it is the most naturalistic of all the religions. We can say too, with Daoism, unlike the other religions, there's arguably far less patriarchy involved in that religion. We can think of the yin and yang, the taijitu, as it's called, or taiji even, has as the core, ultimate concern the feminine world. Yin, the feminine, and yang, the masculine. And we'll look into what that all means shortly. There is in China this painting of the vinegar tasters. Vinegar in this instance stands for life itself. And for this, the Buddha says, the vinegar of life is sour. We should leave it all together. Confucius comes across the same vinegar of life and declares the vinegar is bitter. We need to work hard and maintain our place in the social hierarchy just to keep the bitterness in control. And Lao Tzu comes along and tastes of the vinegar of life and declares that it is sweet. In this sense, Taoism has no good or evil. Some like often to think of yin and yang as good and evil, but they are not. They are masculine and feminine characteristics of the entire world, the world of nature, our nature. And so we want to remember that China is one of our ancient most civilizations. Civilization, we can definitely say, starts in Sumer and Babylon, and then vein-like branches out to Egypt, to the Indus Valley and the Indus River civilization, and then finally the Yellow River in China. These are the ancient-most seats of civilization, these four places. And so the Chinese are an ancient civilization, not recently civilized like, well, the British. And so in this earliest period, we see this figure of the Emperor Chandi, or Heaven Earth. We can already see a hint of the yin and yang motif there. Chandi is the axis from the sacred realm to the profane world in which we live. And we might note he's an emperor. And so the Chinese motif of the emperor will live on throughout its history. On Mount Tai, one of the holy mountains of China, we see a replica of an imperial palace. This imperial palace is a symbol of the Chinese religious ethos. And not many realize that when we say China, we're talking about the Han Chinese. I always wondered as a kid, what are those stars on the Chinese flag? There was no Wikipedia to consult. And so I discovered the big star is the Han ethnicity. And we should note the Chinese historically called their nation the Middle Kingdom. China's a name that harkens back to the Latin period, the period of the Roman Empire when the Qin dynasty ruled. So once again in English we have the wrong name for a people and the religions of these peoples. And so the Chinese have a consciousness of being surrounded by the northern barbarians. And so these, as I was taught by a Chinese person, Chinese students learn this in school, Han, Man, Mong, Wei, Zhang. These are the ethnicities. So the Manchu, the Mongols, the Turks, and the Tibetans, along with the Han Chinese, symbolized by the largest star, and then the four smaller ones represent these bordering ethnicities. And it's a back and forth between these countries in terms of war and the like for millennia. And so among these legendary emperors, the Yellow Emperor is considered to be the ancestor of the Han Chinese. Now, when it comes to Taoism, what does it mean? What is this Tao? Tao technically refers to the way. We can say the way of what, though? Early Christianity called itself the way, but it's quite a different path than that of the Daoists. We should note that though there are later conflicts I'll discuss between Buddhists and Confucianists and Daoists, there's really a harmony among these three religions. And as I've questioned many in East Asian, they just don't understand why the Abrahamic religions are fighting each other all the time. It doesn't make sense. When they do polls of religion, or so I've read, in Japan they ask, are you Confucian? And people check yes. Are you Buddhist? Well, of course. Are you Daoist? Of course. And they get results with more than 100%. Whereas it's hardly the case in the United States that we have Jewish Muslims or Muslim Christians. And so, with Lao Tzu, the old master is what it means, appearing in the middle of the first millennium before the Common Era, we can certainly say Taoism is an axial age philosophy. That is a philosophy from the pan-ethnic empires that is universalizing, and beyond the city-state or the tribe are two earlier evolutes of religion. Legends surround the founder, Lao Tzu. His name means simply the old master, and scholars aren't sure if it was one individual or several old masters compiled into one. And it is said that he was an archivist, and it is said he was a government administrator, keeping records until the day came when one day he decided, as I like to quote Johnny Paycheck, take this job and shove it. He left his riches behind and walks off to the woods, and as he meets a guardian at the gates of the Chinese Empire, so the legends say, the gatekeeper asked him to write down his words of wisdom, and these become known as the Tao Te Ching. And that is the Tao, the way, its day, its virtues, its qualities and characteristics, and Jing, those stanzas about these things. And so this Tao Te Ching is aphoristic in nature, short cryptic comments that take some feeling more than thinking to understand. Taoism, we can say, is all about one's inner intuition and a way of harmony with nature. So what does this phrase from the Tao Te Ching mean? The five colors, sights and sounds, blind the eyes, the ears, nose, racing and hunting madden the mind. What could that mean? In fact, it refers to this world, the world of careers, the world of concerns and sorrows and worry and anxiety. This is the racing and hunting that madden the mind. And finally, when the Tao Te Ching has Lao Tzu saying, the wise let go of that and seize this, that refers to the career, your name, your place in society, your job, all of that is that. And this is nature. Our very bodies are considered to be miracles of the manifest Tao. From the unmanifest Tao emerge all things. Original non-existence blooms into the world of galaxies, universes, and the like. So it's kind of a famous saying that he who knows the Tao does not speak it, and he who speaks it does not know it, which might make you doubt my own presentation here. So the Tao that can be expressed is not the eternal Tao. Those are the day of the Tao, the Tao Te Ching. The qualities or characteristics the unmanifest Tao brings forth into this world of multitudes. And so when we look at this very famous symbol, the yin and yang, properly called the Taiji or Taijitu, yin and yang are not, of course, as I said earlier, good and evil. They represent male and female. There is really nothing evil in the Taoist world. There is, however, a lack of harmony and balance that can cause anxiety and fear. So not only does yin and yang represent male and female, it also represents qualities of the Tao. It's day again. That could be moistness versus dryness, brightness versus darkness. If we think of our world, if everything were all light, we could see nothing. And if everything were all dark, we could see nothing. So it is the harmony of yin and yang that are critical to understanding the Taoist ultimate reality. So what is the ultimate? What is, I guess we could say, heaven's equivalent in Taoism? In philosophical Taoism, we have the idea of perfect balance. Inaction, it's called, or wu wei. And this inaction is not sitting on your couch watching the football game. It is rather a composed, balanced, calm nature. In fact, in this clip we can see Bruce Lee here playing ping pong with nunchaku. And yet, though he's moving so much, his mind is so still and in harmony with the Tao that he can perform amazing feats of action while yet having his mind and body in a state of inaction or wu wei. And so that is one of the principal characteristics we can see in Taoism, is this emphasis on kinetic or moving practice as a core part of the religion. When we think, again, of the yin and yang, it is properly thought of as a three-dimensional energy ball. The yin and yang are coursing around the energy ball at amazing speeds and power, believe it or not. This power, the breath of the universe, called qi, courses throughout our body, the universe, and even in the martial arts movies. It can be used to force enemies against a wall, believe it or not. And so Tai Chi, one of the core practices of Taoist tradition, is such a kinetic, embodied movement aiming for a state of pure inaction, which is really, as we might put it positively, a state of complete integration with the nature of the universe. However, it should be noted, there is in Taoism, and we call this the popular or people's Taoism, the figure of the Jade Emperor who does rule a heavenly pavilion. The difference between the Jade Emperor and someone like Jehovah of the Bible is that the Jade Emperor was allegedly once a human. So Taoists believe that immortality can be cultivated. It's not something we're born with. Taoists, in an effort to seek immortality, even were reputed to have imbibed mercury. There it is. It's metal and yet liquid. A perfect symbol of the Tao, yin and yang. But I wouldn't advise drinking mercury. We also see among the clergy of Taoism there were women practitioners, almost unheard of in the other religions. And so I like to argue it is the most woman-friendly of the religions. Now, it's important to differentiate Buddhism from Taoism. When Buddhism arrives in China, the early Taoists thought, well, this must be a teaching offered by the reincarnation of the old master Lao Tzu. It took maybe 6 centuries, in fact, for terminology borrowed from Taoism into the new Buddhist traditions emerging in China from the Silk Road and the Yellow Sea and the like to become codified. And in essence, Buddhism returns to its Sanskrit original terminology towards the end of the era. What Buddhism picks up from Taoism, however, is this practice of martial arts. We don't see martial artists in Sri Lanka, the Theravada capital, if you will, of Buddhism, or in Tibet, but we see it in East Asia. And various martial arts traditions, like the ninja, for example, harken back to tantric philosophical practice. Likewise, the samurai were Zen practitioners. And we could go on. Every martial art has a philosophy behind it. But for Taoism and China, the indigenous practices were Tai Chi and Bagua. And so we can see this as an original, innovative contribution China has made to world religious culture. We would be wrong to equate Wu Wei, or inaction, however, with nirvana. Nirvana is a snuffing out of the ego self in our minds. But Wu Wei, inaction, is a complete integration of our mind and body in a kinetic flow with the ever-flowing universe, the Tao. So both Chinese religions, Confucianism and Taoism, have nothing like a supreme being who can save you from sin. Rather, we call these religions immanental. That means here and now, this worldly religions. I've spoken to many a Confucian scholar, and they always reject the label religion for Confucianism, and likewise Taoism. These I call the invisible religions we have in China. If we were to decide that because there's no supreme being in a religion, we'd have to conclude that half the Eurasian continent wasn't religious, because we see no God in Jainism, Buddhism, Confucianism, or Daoism. In fact, on the issue of Buddhism, we can see in these two figures a big difference between Buddhism and Daoism. One we can see is colored in blue. His hair has grown out like the Tao or nature intended. The blue is a nice symbol for flowing water, which also points to the Tao. The Buddhist, on the other hand, has shaved his head, rejecting nature in effect. And we can see the dazzling saffron robes he has that point to the awakening of the consciousness. In both of these guys, though, we see pretty clear evidence of China's third religion, Confucianism. Because unlike many a Buddhist in the other parts of the world, this one's not smiling. He rather has the serious, even perhaps stern, face of a Confucian person. We'll look at that in our next unit. We can say as Buddhism enters China, the whole scene is transformed. In the first centuries, Buddhism trickles in then, again through the Silk Road and South China sea trades, through both merchants and monks. When it first lands, of course, then Daoists see a kinship. This is partly why Buddhism takes root in China, but not Hinduism or Jainism. Buddhism and Daoism don't really conflict, even though they're distinct. Through the course of several centuries, we see by the 6th century or so, Buddhism in fact is dominating China in its government and the culture at large. Indian spices transform Chinese food, for example. Indian art definitely impacts the Chinese cultural scene, as now Buddha images from Central Asia, Gandhara and the like are imported into China and transformed. So Buddhism transforms China, but China also transforms Buddhism. And we'll look at that in our unit on Buddhism outside of India. By 843 to 845, though, the Daoists and Confucianists have had enough of this Buddhism. I'm not sure how many want to spend their tax money on the lavish monasteries built by Buddhists, culminating in the period of the Empress Wu, the only empress of China I've heard of. And she spends much of the national treasury on building Buddhist monuments. This particularly will rub the Confucianists the wrong way. Maybe few of us want to pay for guys gazing at their navels. I think that's how the Confucian guys look at Buddhism. And so from 843 to 845, tens of thousands of Buddhist monks were forced back to work. Tens of thousands of shrines and monasteries were destroyed as Emperor Wuzong is told by his Daoist advisors he can attain immortality by removing black from China, a reference to Buddhism. And likewise, as Confucian scholars will like to resume control and patriarchy and return China back to its original Confucian self. And so with Daoism and Confucianism, I like to say there is little to say but much to do. I think to really properly teach Daoism, why, we would have to learn Tai Chi moves, holding our bodies in perfect balance, which is tough for many of us moderns to do, while we integrate our bodies with the very body of the universe. And then in China, as in all cultures, there's something like the feminine represented. And in this case, we can say China's Virgin Mary, if you will, is this figure of Guanyin. She who hears the cries of the world. She is a bodhisattva of Buddhism, but also some speculate her origins lie in Taoist legend. The story has it that she wanted to be a monk and ran away from her parents to not be forced into marriage and live a household life. And while at the Buddhist monastery in the woods, she hears her father is ill, and the only cure is offering her arms to save him. Her arms, eyes, body, and so she does. Her father is saved, and as she's ascending into the air after her death and sacrifice, she declares that she will remain in this world to help all living beings struggle to final awakening as a bodhisattva. And so, as the bodhisattva of infinite compassion, Guanyin is identical in theory to the Dalai Lamas, who are also seen as incarnations of the bodhisattva of compassion. So again, in China, as everywhere, we do see women represented. We do see the need